This tutorial is going to show you how to design some of the logos that we're doing in class. In case some students are taking a little bit longer, you can go ahead and watch some of these to work on creating some of the logos. So the first thing we're going to do is make the Frost logo, and you're going to need to download the Romance font and install it just like we did in previous tutorials. You're going to download that, find it, double click the zipped file, open the folder and find the font, double click it, hit the install font. Then you're going to then install the next font. And install it. Alright, so let's go back. So now we are going to be working in Illustrator. Now Illustrator is a little bit different than Photoshop. So you're going to want to keep a folder on your jump drive that has all the files that you're utilizing in Illustrator, because Illustrator is a little bit like Final Cut Pro and InDesign, where they have to have the files that you're utilizing within the software in the folder and the font that you're utilizing in the folder. Otherwise those items will not appear. So you need to make a logo tutorial folder with your name on it, so your initials, logo, and then put all the files you're going to use, all the templates and all the fonts that you're going to use that are special fonts in it. So now we're going to open up Adobe Illustrator. So once you make the folder, you're going to make a new document. So we're going to go File, New, just like you do in Photoshop or Microsoft Word. And we're going to title it your first initial, last name, Logo T for Logo Tutorial. You're going to have 5 artboards because we're doing 5 different logos, and we want each logo on its own artboard or page. We are going to click on it and we're going to do a letter. So you can either click on the size and pick letter or type in 8.5 inches by 11 inches. We're going to have it going vertical. CMYK is for printing, so we can leave it in that. Actually, let's go ahead and change it to RGB since we're only going to be functioning on the computer and not sending this to a printer. If you are going to send this to a printer, you need to discuss with your printer. A lot of printers do want it to be CMYK. However, like the printers that you use at home or in our department will be fine with RGB. So if you're going to go print your final designs at CopyCow, you might want to talk to them. Do they need the files as an RGB file, or do they need the files as a CMYK file? So once you have these changes, we're going to go ahead and say OK. Now these are your different artboards. They look like different pages, and that's basically essentially what they are. So what we're going to do is we're going to import the first design we're going to work on, which is your Frost. So we're going to go up and we're going to say File, Place. What that means is we're going to place an item onto the page and use it as art in our design, or for us in this instance it's going to be as a template. So File, Place, and then I'm going to pick Frost. Which is your cupcake. And now I'm going to move it and put it on my first artboard. Now you can see the bounding box, which is this blue box, is going outside the art page. So we're going to hold the Shift key down, and now I'm going to click with the mouse and I'm going to bring it inward to fit onto the page. And now it redesigns it proportionately. Remember, you have to hold the Shift key on the keyboard, then go down to the bottom corner and pull inward in order for it to be adjusted proportionally, which is crucial with logos and pictures of humans or animals, so that way they don't get skinnier or fatter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over and I'm going to show you a little bit about layers. Because you know some things about Photoshop, you do know some things about Illustrator. You'll notice that instead of seeing most of your windows popped out, you do have windows or palettes over off to the side. And the layers one is the one that looks like squares over squares. So I can click on that. One thing you'll see is that there's a blue color next to layer 1 and a blue box. What that means is any item on layer 1 is going to be a blue binding box. So when I click on it, I will see it's blue, and then I can tell that it goes to this layer that says blue. Again, we want to keep things organized, so let's click, and rename it and call it Frost Logo Template. If you wanted to, you could change the color. So I could change it to a pink. So let's go ahead and change it to a pink. So that way it kind of matches the pink in the cupcake, which makes it a little bit easier for you to distinguish and remember what layer it's on. Once you've made those changes, we're going to go ahead and press OK. Now, since we have a Frost template layer, we're going to actually make a layer above that and call it My Frost Logo. So I know that's the layer that you have your items on for the template. So we're going to go back and we're going to go to the bottom of the layers box, and it's the same symbol like you see in Photoshop, and we're going to create a new layer. Now this layer is a red, which kind of goes with the pink, so I'll leave it. But I'll click, and I'm going to change it to My Frost Logo. And I'm going to say OK. So now we want My Frost Logo over the Frost Logo template in the Layers palette, because just like in Photoshop, whatever layer is on top is the layer we're going to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to first start out by creating items in Illustrator for your logo. Now remember, logos are generally vector graphics, which are points and lines and paths. So we're actually going to draw this cupcake. So to draw this cupcake, I'm going to make sure I'm on the red layer, and we're going to go and get your pen tool. You can press P for pen just like you can in Photoshop, and it'll bring up your pen tool. Just like in Photoshop, when you select a tool, you have this options bar that allows you to change things about your tool. Now, the solid box means color, whereas the box with the square out of it is your stroke. So you can have a different stroke color than you can have a fill color. But for us, we don't necessarily have a stroke around the cupcake. So we're going to go ahead and say stroke of none, which is a red. And then the solid box we can pick, and we're going to pick the color from the cupcake. So just like in Photoshop, we can use the eyedropper. You can press I for eyedropper and click on the pink. Now you have the pink over here to the side. What we want to do is, you'll notice you have swatches. If you're going to make a logo or a design and you're going to constantly be using that color, you're going to want to add it to your swatches. So if you want to create a new group, say you have different colors for that logo, you can create a new group and have multiple colors within it for that specific design. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to my swatches. I can just click, hold, and drag, as you saw. Click, hold, and drag, and I can drag it over to the swatches and it adds it. So I don't need both of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. But you can see that when you move your mouse over the swatch, it tells you the C, M, Y, K values of that. So if you haven't done the swatch, you can always just go in and adjust the C, M, Y, K values. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the pen tool. Now we do want to have it filled with the pink color. However, sometimes when you trace an item and you have a solid fill, when you start tracing it and you have the different items that you're tracing, you're going to start to see a color appear, and sometimes it blocks you from seeing what you want it to be. So far I haven't had that problem. So I'm just going and I'm actually recreating it. So you can see the pen tool actually can be utilized to create different shapes. But now you can see how it covers it, so I can't really see where I'm going. So it can be kind of confusing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you a little bit about the pen tool, and when we do it, we're actually going to switch it and say we're going to have a fill of none. And what I think is easier when you're tracing something is not to have it the same color, but change the colors at the end so then you can see what your colors are compared to theirs. So use a different color than the pink. I'm just going to use this teal, no fill, and then I'm going to go say teal for my stroke. Now the pen tool is a little tricky for some people starting out, so I'm going to zoom in and show you. Remember Command ++, H for hand to move it. Now with the pen tool, P for pen, it clicks and it creates points and lines, and you can click, hold, and pull, and you can see you can pull it in different directions. Once you pull it in the direction you want, if I pull inward, it makes it not as big. If I keep pulling outward, it stretches that shape out. But after I make a line, you'll see you have these two handles on the curve. And when you move, then sometimes it's hard to have the curve you want because there's those two handles. So what you can do is, if you move your pen tool to the anchor point, each of those squares that you see for where you clicked with the pen tool is called an anchor. You can click and you'll see by that pen tool there's a little V. And what that V does is I can click and delete one of those handles, which makes it so it's not pushing on the curve on both sides where the handles are, but only on one side, which allows you to have a slightly easier time of making the curve look the way you want it. So you can see I can make it bigger, or I can try to line it up and make it flow a little better. So what we're going to do is we're going to trace over that cupcake. So we're going to use the pen tool, and you're going to click every time you see a point. So I'm going to attach the pen or move the pen so the tip of it is on the bottom of the corner, and I am on my Frost logo layer. Click once, just move up, click again, click over, click again. Now when it comes to curves, you can see we have one nice smooth curve here, so we could just do one click. Whereas here we have a curve inward and then a curve outward. And you can't really do that with one pen tool click. So when you look at things and you're trying to decide how to create the object, you need to look at and see where you think they click to create the curve. So to me it looks like they probably clicked right here, because you can see the difference to create the inner curve, and then down here to create the outer curve. And that green line that's popping up is trying to show you that if I clicked there, it would be the same, and it would be horizontal and level. So we're going to go back over here, and we're going to click up at the top because there's only one solid curve. Click and hold. So I'm holding with the mouse and I'm pulling towards the left. Now I'm pulling up until I line it up, and when you line it up, let go. Now you have the handle. So I'm going to go over here, move the pen tool towards the anchor point. I can see it's at the anchor point because it told me, and I also see the V shape by the pen tool. So I'm going to click there and get rid of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and click here because it looks like this is where they clicked, and I'm going to pull and push up to bring it up. Pull, 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 pull. So I'm holding with the mouse and pulling. Let go. I'm going to delete my anchor point just like I did on the last one. Click down here, click and hold, pull down, push up a little bit, and I have the shape. I'm going to click back over here and delete the anchor point, click over, get the side, click down on the bottom, and click over here. And when you close a shape or a path with the pen tool, you'll notice that there's a circle there, meaning that you are closing the shape. So I can close it. Now that I've drawn my shape, I can go and change my color based on what I want the item to be. Now you'll notice that since the pen tool I've changed it, it doesn't have the color options up top. But if I go over here, I can hit the swap and I can swap it. So now I have a stroke of none, but the color's blue. Well, what I can also do is I know I want this pink color. So I can come over here and drag that pink color into that shape. So again, just click, hold, and drag, and I can change the color of the shape by click, holding, and dragging from the swatches. So any color you want. We want the pink color because that's the company's color, and now I've designed the cupcake. And you can tell it's on that layer because again it has a red bounding box, whereas the template has a pink bounding box. Now with these items up here, it's just actually text and just text. So we have a serif font, which is that romance font. It's similar, it's not quite the same. So we're going to create the frost. I personally don't like the C. I know they're maybe going for a cupcake, but I think we're going to not do the C because I don't think it is good for legibility. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the text tool, just like in Photoshop. So you have different types of text. You can type on pads, you can type vertically, and in different shapes and areas. But right now we're going to just go with the regular text tool. So now that I have the text tool selected, I'm going to change the font. So I'm going to go over here to my character palette. If you don't see your character palette, remember, just like in Photoshop, you can go up to Window, and you can go to your Type, and then Character. So it's a type, and then you can go to Character, and it allows you to adjust the type. But mine's already open. So I'm going to click on Madrid Pro. Now I'm going to go down to Romance, Fatal Serif STD, and I'm going to try the regular, and then we might go to, we'll try bold since it's a little thicker, and we'll go to that and say bold. And I know 12 point is going to be too small, so let's go ahead and make it bigger. Let's try 48. Might be a little small. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to click, and we're going to type the word frost. It looks like it's already too small. Frost. So we don't need the F-O, so I'm going to do the F and the R in one box and the S and the T in another so I can move them independently. So I want to go ahead and put them here, and I'm going to adjust them larger. I can just drag, and you can see I can create the font larger like I want, which is nice. So I'm going to try to make it roughly the same size. It's going to be a little bit different because it's a different font, but we're going to get it close. So there's the baseline, and we're going to bring it down. So it's roughly the same size. Then if I know this is going to be the same font size I need, since I dragged it, it's going to be a slightly different size font. It's 243.13. If I know I'm going to have it the same size, I can copy it, edit copy. Then I can go over here and say edit paste or command V, and then I can go back and use my text tool, just like we did in Photoshop when we changed stuff, and I can highlight it. I can tell I'm going to highlight it because it's right by the letter R, touching it. Ooh. Or you can click, and you can hit ST. And then so I can make sure that they're even. We can go to View, and we can do rulers just like we did in Photoshop, and we can say Show Rulers. And I'm going to click, hold, and drag from the top, and I'm going to put it on the baseline of the R. So that way I know where I need to line up my ST. And I'm going to line it up. You can use the mouse, or you can make minor adjustments using the keys on the keyboard. Now you can see the T's and the F's and the J's that from this font do extend down past the baseline, and that's okay. We just want to definitely line up the R and the S on there. So right now, if I turn off the visibility on the template layer, you can see I've already designed the logo Frost. Now if I want to, I can click on the cupcake and move it over just a little bit if I wanted, so it's a little bit more breathing room between those two letters and a little bit more even. It will mean that it's probably going to be not lined up behind the template, but it's better to think about how it looks with these fonts that I'm actually using as opposed to the fonts in the template. I'm going to go ahead and save it, so Command S to save, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to save it in that one folder I asked you to create, your logo tutorial folder, and we're going to say save because it has all your photos and items in it, and we're going to say save. Now we do have a sans serif font because they have contrast in their text, and contrast in their text color. So let's go ahead now, and we're going to get our text tool, and we're going to go over here and we can type cupcakes, but let's go ahead and change our font. So we know we don't want romance. We want something where it is a sans serif. I have Salute. It's definitely a font I have downloaded. You can see I have tattoo fonts. I have tons of little fonts that you don't have because I love downloading fonts. I have Wizard Magic fonts, Arabian fonts, and things like that that I've downloaded from dafont.com. So go ahead and find a sans serif font that isn't too skinny or too bold and looks similar to the one that says cupcakes. So I'm going to go with the Salute, and I'm going to say cupcakes. Now you'll notice that the color's wrong, so I can highlight it and go over here, and I could just click and hold and drag the pink to my fill, and then now my fill is pink. One thing you'll notice though is that they have a lot of space between each of these letters. Like we talked about in your text tutorial, that means they have positive tracking. So we can click, 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 and then it'll bring the text tool up and highlight your cupcakes. And I can go over here to tracking, and instead of 0, let's say 75. That's not enough. So I guarantee you 100 won't be enough. So let's try 200. Not enough. So let's try 300. Depending on what font you use depends on what kind of tracking you're going to need. I still need it to take up more space and have more space, so let's try 500. Alright, now I'm going to use my move arrow or selection arrow, and I'm going to move it, and it's basically taking up almost the same amount of space but not quite. So I need to again do more. So you can go and select the text tool, or if you have the arrow tool selected like I do, I can click, 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 and it'll highlight it and change it to the text tool for me, which is nice. So if I'm at 500, I'm going to try 575 and see if that brings me to my space. Not quite, so let's go ahead and just do 600. Again, your tracking is going to be different based upon what kind of font you have. 600 is not quite enough. Let's try 630. Alright, 630 is great. So now I'm going to use the move arrow and I'm going to move this up and line it up to about where cupcakes would be. Now the problem is that the font that we used has a T that descends past the baseline, which means now if I line cupcakes up where the other cupcakes is, it's going into my T. And we don't really want it to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and move it down using the arrow key on the keyboard. Now I'm going to go over to my layers. Again, that is the two squares on top of each other. And I'm going to turn off the template layer, and now you can see I have designed their logo. So you've already designed one logo now. So let's go ahead and save it. And that's how you have designed your frost layer. Now it's saying that the font sleuth could not be embedded into the PDF document because of licensing restrictions. Stroke text will not be visible. So you do want to make sure that you have fonts that work with your program. So what I would need to do is find that font within my font downloads in my documents and put that font within the folder that I have all my elements in. So I could change the font, but I'll just go ahead after this and move that font into that folder so that way the printer will have that font as well, because it's not a common font. If you download fonts and they're not fonts that somebody has and you're not having them print from a PDF, which means it's flattened and they don't need the font, if they're just printing from this file, they'll need the font. So you'll need to put that font that you downloaded in the folder. So you will use that font in the folder for when you give it to me as well.